Hello students, this is Mrs. Moore for ELA Summer School, and this is lesson 4.4, so the fourth week, the fourth day. As you can see, your next assignment is reading a modern take on the traditional teepee. So here this article is, and of course you are initially meant, it doesn't say you have to annotate it. But you're meant to choose an important detail from the text and write a paragraph explaining how it supports the main idea of the text. So let's talk through this a little bit. I'll tell you why I found it interesting, and maybe that will inspire you in what you might write about, what you found interesting. So first of all, I thought this was pretty clever, very clever. This is kind of representational art, and it's art that makes a statement at the same time, which is not the same as what we think of as traditional art, perhaps. A beautiful painting that the painting itself tells a story or captures a scene, or is a portrait or still life, all these things you studied in art class. And it's also challenging the way that you think about Native Americans. These teepees are made of plexiglass and they're lit up. And it's not how you imagine. I think when we think of Native Americans, we think of fringe and turquoise jewelry, and we think of certain textures that are earthy, but this is the opposite of that. And according to this article, it's supposed to show the future of Native Americans, and also moving away from kind of the sad image of the natives having land stolen from them. Because very often, yes, you could look at Native Americans as being a people who are sad and who have lost so much. But what these artists, these three artists behind this art, wanted to show is that that's not all there is to Native Americans. We are not just a sad history. Not to mention we're not static, meaning unchanging. We are a people who changes, and we have a future. And we are more than just these sad people who were pushed aside by the white folks, right? That's very interesting, and it's a completely different way to think about Native Americans. How empowering is it if you're a Native American to look at that and say, I have control of my own story now, and I can make my future, and I don't have to be linked to that sadness of the past. However, I don't have to reject my past. They're keeping the symbolism of the teepee. Something else the article points out to you is that the exhibit is called Manifest Teepee, okay, which is supposed to be a play on, as it tells us, manifest destiny, which you know from your study of history is the notion that America should extend from sea to shining sea, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But in order to do so, people living there, the indigenous peoples, had to be displaced, right? But what if that didn't have to be the end of Native American stories? I think that's part of what this art is challenging. Now, it says here that this is art that is meant to create a dialogue, a conversation. Now, we live in times when we are trying to challenge each other to think about the different kinds of people who live in America. We don't all want to be the same. We don't all have the same stories, the same backgrounds, the same lifestyles, but let's appreciate what is beautiful and sometimes sad and struggling in one another, and let's talk about it. Let's learn about each other. That is a dialogue. And that's, to me, is great art. Art can be beautiful, but art can also make you think. And maybe great art does both, right? So this shows too was in Canada, and it was projected as light images on trees, which also speaks to nature and the land lost. So, you know, and there's also this other really neat point. I just thought there was so much great symbolism here. I want to give you good ideas to write about, which said the art was made transportable. Art you can move. Sounds like nomads, right? Okay, the native peoples who moved in search of traveling prey, the animals they would kill and eat. So there's a lot here that is interesting and clever, I think. So hopefully I've given you some good tips for things to think about. And until next time, see you then.